Superpowers for good, shaping the fate. Investors and dreamers open the gate. Super Crow stands loud, proud, and true, building tomorrow for me and you.
Hello, everyone. I am so excited today. I've got just a phenomenal guest. I now think of him as a dear friend, but Luni Libes is with us. Luni is, I'm grateful to say, an investor in the super crowd. He's been on the show a number of times over the years. We're thrilled to have him back, but he's in the middle of a crowdfunding campaign on WeFunder with Africa Eats, a company that he created to really do dramatic things on ending hunger and poverty in Africa. This is an episode you do not want to miss, so stick around. Luni, welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks for having me back.
Well, it's a thrill. It's a thrill to have you back. You came on just a little over a year ago to talk about Africa Eats, and it's such an inspiring story. When I saw you were doing another WeFunder campaign, I thought we've got to have Luni back to talk about what he's doing and get the information so that people have an opportunity to invest in this tremendous opportunity to support ending poverty and hunger in Africa. So tell us a little bit about the story of Africa Eats.
All right. So twice you said hunger and poverty. That's our mission. But we do it as a for-profit. So normally people think of that's work that the nonprofits are supposed to do, the governments are supposed to fix, right? The UN is supposed to fix. That's nice, but they're not fixing the problem. So we're jumping in as a for-profit company to lower hunger and to literally pull people out of poverty. And it's working. We have proof that it's working. And we do this by being an investment company. So we've invested in over 20 companies in Africa, and they're building out the food and ag supply chain. You're looking at a video of one of the factories. And they do this by aggregating food grown by existing farmers. In Africa, typically a farm is an acre or two, owned by a family, run by a family, producing some food. But usually they're not selling that into the food supply chain. So our companies are buying from the farmers, hundreds of thousands of farmers now. And then they do a little bit of processing. This is a breakfast cereal. And then they sell that food in the cities. And when they income grows by generally a factor of 2. So these people go middle income farming, and then their kids and whatnot. And then on the manner, the way the food gets around Africa, 30 or 40% of it is lost along the way. And in the way we're doing it, because it's a professionally run company, 5%, 6% is lost along the way. So we're saving more of the food that's getting grown, which then also offsets imports in Africa and saves money for the continent and all the countries in the continent that way as well.
It really is just kind of cool and inspiring what you're doing. And people can learn more about this on the WeFunder page at wefunder.com/Africa Eats, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Including links off to this video where you can hear the story. This is the founder who's telling the story here. This is Heiko Matei from Tanzania.
Yeah. It's an amazing effort. And it's inspiring. It manifests, it sort of demonstrates, it sort of proves a long-held thesis of mine, and that is that when you are doing good profitably, the good becomes infinite, right? You can scale this without end if it's profitable, and that's what you've created, a profitable business that can scale, right?
The theory really is, look, if you find a company whose impact is embedded in what they do, if their impact is done by the company operating and selling its products, not by something added on, not charity on the side, not give one, buy one, give one, but literally this company you're looking at here buys food, right? Maize flour is the primary food source, from thousands of subsistence farmers. And therefore, as this company grows, and we've seen it grow, we've helped it grow from $24,000 a year to, I think it was $1.6 million last year, $1.5 million, something around that. And so we've seen it go from a few hundred farmers to thousands of farmers. It can get a lot bigger. There's a lot more opportunity. There's over 1 billion people who live on the continent of Africa. And not just this company, but once we've proven out that we can do this in Tanzania, this is the only breakfast cereal company in Tanzania. I only know of one in Kenya. I don't think there's any in Uganda or Rwanda or most of the other countries. There's 45 countries in sub-Saharan Africa. We could replicate this. We can either bring this company to the next country over, or literally we can just find another entrepreneur in another part of the continent that wants to do the same thing. And we can teach that person like how to do it because we've done it before.
Just amazing, really, to think about the opportunity here to bring all of this together. How did this start? What was the kernel for you in bringing this all together?
So it actually started as a business accelerator called Fledge. I started that in 2012, focused on mission-driven for-profit companies. So same thing, a mission embedded in the company. And we helped over 100 companies and invested in over 100 companies around the world in like 40 countries and almost every continent. We had about 24 of those graduates. We call them fledglings from Fledge. 24 were from Africa, most of which were in food and ag because it's the biggest industry in Africa. And they were the ones that were not being funded. Like other companies, the American companies were finding follow-on funding. The European graduates were finding follow-on funding. There's not a lot of follow-on funding in Africa. So in 2020, when the pandemic hit, my co-founder and I, we decided, okay, it's time. We're going to go we'll fund them ourselves if no one else will fund them. And so we took the companies out of the Fledge portfolio. We put them in a new company we started called Africa Eats. We went out and raised some capital for that. We've raised millions of dollars of capital so far. And we have been growing the companies ever since. So if you look at like, well, how much have they grown? In 2019, all the companies combined did less than 7 million in annual revenues. And in 2023, 4 years later, they did over 36 million in annual revenue. So they went from 7 to 36. So a factor of 5 growth in 4 years. They're almost all profitable. They all have been profitable, but in any given year, something goes wrong with a few. I think there were 2 or 3 last year that were not profitable. And they're nowhere near done growing. We're going to add more companies and we'll get these companies growing much bigger over the next few years. And again, just to tell you what you're looking at here, this is Peniel Meat Processing. When we met them, it was a $30,000 a year sausage company in Rwanda, which, by the way, was the 4th largest meat company in Rwanda back in 2017 at $35,000 a year. This one's over $1 million as well. They'll be the largest chicken processor in Rwanda by the end of the year. We've helped fund that. They did over $1 million in revenue in the last 2 years. Is another great entrepreneur. And he started a second company. He found there's lots of things missing in Africa. One thing missing in his home country in Rwanda was food and ag logistics, trucking companies that had refrigerated trucks. So he has a meat company. He needs to move meat around. You do that in refrigerated trucks. He couldn't find a company that even owned 2, let alone cold rooms and the rest of the cold chain. So he started one. And he did that in the pandemic, in the lockdown in Rwanda in 2020. And in 4 years, he built it to be over 6 million in revenue, profitable all but the first month of operations. All the same guy who's doing the chickens. That's the kind of humongous opportunities that exist. And we're funding that, and we expect that to be, tens of millions of dollars in the next year or two, and then hundreds of millions of dollars later.
It really is an inspiring scale of operation, and I just love what you're doing. You say you've raised millions of dollars. Most of that was not from the crowd. Tell us a little bit about why you felt like you wanted to do the WeFunder campaigns to bring people in from the crowd? Why is that part of the strategy?
One reason is that, again, there's very little capital flowing into these kinds of companies in Africa. There are hundreds of thousands of companies like this. This one you're now seeing is Swahili Honey, second largest honey processor in the country of Tanzania. Who's funding this company? Yeah, we're funding it, and a few institutions have lent it a little bit of money, but there's no angel groups out there funding it. There are, when it was smaller, there were no VCs that were funding it. So we've done a two-prong approach. One, we followed the normal path with accredited investors, mostly American, few European, and whatnot. They funded the bulk of the money. But then we wanted the crowd to join in. And one other reason we wanted the crowd to join in, right? And the first campaign was 156 investors, which was amazing, right? We're looking for another 100 in the current campaign. We're actually we'll go back there in a bit. But what we really want, we're targeting Africa Eats to be a public company, right? A company where not only can the crowd buy shares, but the crowd can then sell their shares whenever they want. That's one of the flaws of crowdfunding at the moment. So we're trying to make this a public company that is owned by thousands of people. There's no reason why a few, billionaires should own this, or we don't have any billionaires. I don't think we have any billionaires. It shouldn't just be owned by a handful of families. This is something that's helping the whole. We could do so much more with 100 companies, and we would like thousands of people to be participating in the capital that will let us go and support hundreds of companies.
It is really, really inspiring to see what you're doing and what you have done so far, and I'm grateful that you're doing it. Let's talk a little bit about the prospects. Not only are you trying to get this public, but it seems to me that when you talk about a business that is doing $1 million a year, that in a marketplace as big as the continent of Africa, and many of these companies can compete across the continent, that the market opportunity is 1,000 times that, isn't it? Isn't there some really big upside potentially here?
Yeah, so nobody believes me when I say, that these companies can grow 1,000-fold. But again, this one here we're looking at, when we met them, was doing 110, 120,000 in annual revenues. Now it's past 3 million. It should be 4 million this year. And not only have they grown at this speed, 50, 60, 100% year over year, but all of the companies that we've found have been able to generate more than $1 of revenue per dollar of investment capital, which is unheard of in the VC space. That's just the opposite of what happens. So I want to say that again. Like we'll invest $100,000 in one of these companies in one moment, and from that they'll usually grow by $200,000 or $300,000 a year, if not $500,000 a year. And you're looking at this equipment, and you may be thinking, like, how much does all this cost? Yeah, all the equipment you saw making breakfast cereal was like $120,000. All the equipment you're seeing here processing honey is maybe $200,000. So it's not like a car company where you have to put or electronics fab where you have to put $1 billion down to earn the first dollar. These companies start with like $15,000 or $20,000 worth of equipment, and with that they build a company earning $100,000 or $200,000, and then we give them $100,000 to build a factory like this, and they can grow themselves up to $1 million or $2 million or $3 million. And then where's it go from there? Generally goes to the neighboring countries. So Swahili honey, I said it's in Tanzania, but it's honey and beeswax come from Uganda and Kenya, all the way from we call it DRC, Congo, Democratic Republic of Congo, which is like a 2-day, 3-day drive away by truck. Like, it's coming from a long distance away. So how long until they're aggregating from 1,000 farmers in DRC and Uganda with another factory like this, so that we don't have to bring all the impurities across the continent as well? Yeah, that's a few years out. And then again, there's 45 countries in sub-Saharan Africa. There are very few companies of this scale, of the $1 million scale. And so these companies will start expanding across, well, they could all grow 10 and 50, 100 times in their home country, and then they can replicate that across multiple countries. And so if you got, 100 times bigger in 10 more countries, that's 1,000-fold.
The math is there, right? The math is there. You can see how this becomes really, really big. Well, listen, Luni, I love what you're doing. We're going to take a quick break now, but we'll come back. I'm here with Luni Libes, who is the CEO and founder of Africa Eats, doing a crowdfunding campaign on WeFunder. Just amazing, amazing potential, amazing impact. This is really exciting. When we come back, we're going to talk to Luni about his superpower. Stick around. Don't want to miss this.
You can get in on the ground floor to help fix the climate crisis for as little as $100. Pause now to scan the QR code to get started or visit s4g.biz/raisegreen. You can be a green at Raise Green.
Want to learn from the world's great change makers? Find your superpower. Subscribe to the Superpowers for Good newsletter at superpowersforgood.com. Make your strengths into superpowers that will change the world. Join the super crowd today. Superpowers4good.com.
Hope to raise money from the impact crowd. Good investors are as interested in community, social or environmental impact as you. Connect with Funding Hope, an SEC-registered FINRA member crowdfunding portal to learn how to raise capital from the impact crowd. Scan the QR code now.
Welcome back, everyone. I'm here today with Luni Libes. He is the CEO and founder of Africa Eats, doing amazing things to end poverty and improve access to food in Africa, and building a profitable business while he's doing it. Amazing, amazing. But we're going to shift gears and talk to Luni about his superpower now, so stick around. You don't want to miss this. Luni, you really are a big deal. In this social impact space, you are a player at the highest regard, the highest level. People admire and love you. They follow your advice. You're a big deal. And you've made a big difference in the world. I congratulate you on that. What is your superpower?
I call it if only. So there's so many people out there that talk about the problems, right? The SDGs, or any way you want to talk about the problems of the world. And usually they'll sit back and say, well, if only this existed, we could solve this problem. If only that existed, we could solve this problem. I'm one of those people who does sit around and say, if only, and then I go make it happen. Like that is my superpower of not just sitting back and waiting for someone else to do it, who's never going to do it. I'll just make it happen.
Yeah. What a great superpower. And really, I've seen you manifest that in a lot of ways. Of course, Africa Eats, in a way, is a massive culmination, a massive manifestation of that. But I wonder if you could give us, just to broaden the discussion, give us a different example of a time when you, if only, something into existence.
Well, can I talk about one that's coming up?
Sure, please do.
So I said we're planning on Africa Eats to be a public company. We're in fact planning on some of the companies you're viewing in these videos to be public companies. That's just not done, right? You just think about just here in the US, like when was the last time a small aspiring company went public? I think it was the middle of the 90s, before the dot-com bubble. Right? Apple was only like 4 years old when it went public. That was kind of a normal thing to do in the 80s, and it was normal until the dot-com bubble, but then it's gone away. It's become too expensive to go public, which is why one reason we have crowdfunding is because it became too expensive to go public and just list there. So there is no path at the moment in Africa for a company like you're viewing here to go public. It doesn't make sense for many reasons. First and foremost, the most important reason is that the stock markets in Africa are illiquid. That you can list all you want. It's not expensive to do that, but there's few buyers and sellers because there aren't any market makers. This is something we take for granted in the US because the New York Stock Exchange has had market makers for a little over 100 years. Not much more than 100 years, but it's 3 or 4 generations back. And so we today who are alive never think that it didn't exist, right? London's had them for about the same amount of time. And what a market maker does is it's there to be a buyer when you're a seller and be a seller when you're a buyer. That's its job as a company. It's invisible on the market. It's the reason why when you go on your online brokerage app, whichever one you use, and you place an order, it's the reason why that order closes in seconds. It's not because someone else was buying or selling opposite to you, happened to be at the right same moment. It's because a market maker took the other side of that trade. So if only there were market makers in Africa, then we could make the capital markets in Africa work. So what did I do? I went and started a market maker, the first market maker in the country of Mauritius. And to do that, I had to go get funding for that, and I had to create a business plan. And we're building out a whole bunch of back-end tech to make that possible. But that's a great example of another area where everyone else was sitting around waiting for someone else to do it. And I said, well, if it's needed, then we're going to go do it.
Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. It's so inspiring to see how you approach this, and this if only bringing things into existence is really profound. You know, the whole point of this discussion really is to help other people become more like you, right? To learn from you. How would you coach someone to, if only, something into existence?
Well, part of it is that I've been an entrepreneur since I was 22. So this has been my career. I've spent almost my entire adult life looking for things that are needed in the world and then going making them happen. That's not a normal thing to do. Only like 5% of the population even potentially dreams of making a company. And so I've just been capturing that. I used to just do one company at a time, like everyone else does. I learned along the way I could do one after the other. I did that all in the software industry, where it's more normal. And then what I found as I gotten older is, oh, well, I can use that superpower to go do more things at the same time. That I don't have to. I can hire someone to be the micromanager to manage each of these companies. And then I can go and use this other visionary power I have to see these things are needed. This is what people are talking about, and then going to figure out how to get that one up and running. And as long as they're connected, then it makes sense. As long as there's some overlap where one helps the next helps the next. What holds you back is usually funding. So the solution to how do you fund any of these ideas is networking. And so I spent a large amount of time speaking. Even today, I will take meetings with random people because you never know where the random connection is going to come from. And so when I started Fledge, I started a spreadsheet of everyone I met. So this spreadsheet starts in 2011 when I started the business plan for Fledge. It's over 21,000 people now. So in 12 years, I met over 21,000 people and documented them, because you can't remember 21,000 people. And this is the crowd, right? It's not bigger version of crowd, but this is the crowd I tap when I need something done. And I have most of them in a mailing list. And at times I will mail out a question to them. And if you have enough people in your mailing list, you can get an answer to almost any question in 24 hours or 48 hours.
Yeah.
And it's just a
that
matter
enables you to do it, right?
You got to put in the time to meet the people.
Yeah.
Like, and I probably don't come across as an introvert, but I'm an introvert. But I will just put that aside to go meet the next, 10 people this month.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Well, Luni, we're so grateful that you would be on the show today. Thank you for taking the time. We congratulate you on the success you've had, and wish you every continued success with Africa Eats, working to solve poverty and hunger in the continent of Africa and doing it profitably. And thank you for giving us an opportunity to participate with you on WeFunder. Again, we wish you every success.
All right. Thanks for having me on.
All righty. Let's do some good.